Don't adjust your dial.
You're listening to WFCK Radio. Discover the power. Half hour. With On the Spot with Preacher and the Spaniard. Welcome everyone and all species to the hottest voices in the morning. Your lover's favorite voice to wake up to in the morning. Here's your hosts, Preacher and the Spaniard.
With Preacher and the Spaniard.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I got all my news over here. So if you see me looking in this direction, it's, I'm looking at my news. But good morning. Good morning. Happy Friday morning, everyone. I am Preacher. It is good to see you again. Or see you for the first time if you haven't been here before. But hey, hope you enjoy the show. So, yeah. Everything's going backwards on me over here. Okay. We're not going to talk about that. Anyway, so yeah, technology's hard. So it has been a slow news day. However, let's pile on the Cuomo death toll here. So this just, I can't stand this guy. So Governor Cuomo is the governor of New York State. And this scumbag, how do I put this? Willingly and knowingly suppressed information such as an accurate death toll count in the state of New York. He willingly and knowingly suppressed information that was supposed to be public knowledge and told his aides to rewrite the facts, essentially, so that it would make him look okay. So here's the report. Okay, a report written by state health officials had just landed, and it included a count of how many nursing home residents in New York had died in the pandemic. The number, more than 9,000 by that point in June, was not public, and the governor's most senior aides wanted to keep it that way. They rewrote the report to take it out, according to interviews and documents reviewed by the New York Times. The extraordinary intervention, which came just as Mr. Cuomo was starting to write a book on his pandemic achievements, was the earliest act yet known in what critics have called a months-long effort by the governor and his aides to obscure the full scope of nursing home deaths. After the state attorney general revealed earlier this year, good morning, Wes, that thousands of deaths of nursing home residents had been undercounted, Mr. Cuomo finally released complete data, saying that he had withheld it out of concern that the Trump administration might pursue a politically motivated inquiry into the state's handling of the outbreak in nursing homes. I'm sorry, but if you're willingly suppressing information, that's not a publicly motivated inquiry. That is a what the heck are you doing? That is literally a what the heck are you doing moment. In less than 6 months. So we're talking, remember, pandemic started February-ish to June. 5 months. In 5 months, he had over 9,000 deaths in nursing homes, and they wrote that number out of the report. Yeah. So New York's total of 9,250 deaths far exceeded that of the next highest state, which was New Jersey, which had 6,100 at the time. This makes no sense. This makes no sense. I don't see how this. Okay, you want to impeach people? How about we impeach that guy? Just, I'm just saying. That, anyway, that's just weird. Just absolutely weird. Another interesting and slightly weird thing, and, I just don't, yeah. Yeah. So there is a woman in Chicago who, how did I put this? She's very, very good at evading people. What do I mean by that? She evaded security at Chicago's O'Hare Airport twice. Twice. 23-year-old Yasmina Payton had attempted to stow away on an American Airlines flight so that she could go see rapper Jay-Z in Los Angeles. Video obtained by NBC, local channel number 5, via an open records request showed just how determined she really was, and it raises questions why she was able to evade TSA personnel with relative ease 2 days in a row. One of those videos from November 7, Payton is seen watching the TSA document checker, then ducking under the ropes and pushing past his podium while he's looking the other way. After that, it was no problem for her to make her way to an American Airlines gate, where another video shows her simply walking onto the LA aircraft. Yep. In that incident, Payton was discovered sitting on the airplane without a boarding pass and was removed. But American indicated that after she said she had lost her pass and they couldn't find her in the system, a gate agent assumed she was booked on another carrier and simply escorted her to the non-secure side of the airport without notifying police, which allowed her to try again the next day. Yep. Video from that day once again shows Payton ducking under the ropes undetected, then making her way into virtually deserted concourses in Terminal 3. After lounging in an empty gate area for some time, she's seen darting into a jetway where police said she once again made her way onto an LA-bound aircraft. But she was discovered again, but this time police were called. Payton is free on bond while her trespassing case is pending, but her arrest raises troubling questions about how she was able to avoid detection with such ease twice at O'Hare, one of the busiest airports in the country. I understand that TSA agents are, trying to work through paperwork and they got stuff to do and they're trying to, you don't have just one person there in the background making sure this stuff doesn't happen. And there's cameras everywhere. Why not use a camera system to say, hey, there's some weird, some weird stuff, some shenanigans going on here. It's weird. It's so strange. Anyway, yeah. So here's what she said. Here's her reasoning behind this. This is so strange for me. I was trying to get on a plane to go see Jay-Z, she said. I was trying to get my music heard. Yeah. She says I never had a ticket. The problem occurred when I was on a plane. So she was screened at the X-ray. She was entered into the secured area without any prohibited items. The agency, however, did not address how a civilian was able to evade their trained personnel with such apparent ease on 2 consecutive days. Because she's a civilian. Obviously, you're not going to have some, militia decked out guy with a gun and everything else trying to get through security. It ain't going to work that way. It's going to be a civilian. I don't understand this. Anyway, oh man, some people are dumb. Okay, speaking of dumb people, here we go. So White House Press Secretary Jen I'm guessing it's Psaki or Psaki. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce her last name. My fault. But yesterday defended President Biden's attack on the, quote, Neanderthal thinking, end quote, of governors ending COVID-19 mask mandates and denied that Texas Governor Greg Abbott's counterclaim that Biden is, quote, importing the virus by releasing infected illegal immigrants. Oh, man. Let the political dukesmanship begin. Psaki said that Biden's language was meant to describe the actions of Abbott and fellow Republican Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi, rather than to demean them personally as mentally primitive. Neanderthal thinking. Okay. The behavior of your... I can't stand this. The behavior of a Neanderthal, just to be very clear, the behavior of, she stressed at her daily press briefing. It's the behavior of a Neanderthal. We're not calling them Neanderthals. It was just the behavior of a Neanderthal. Sure. What everybody saw yesterday was a reflection of his frustration and exasperation. So the actual quote from Wednesday was, "The last thing we need is Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything is fine. Take off your mask." That's not what the releases say. Both of them, both the Texas mandate and the Mississippi mandate, both state that the statewide mandates are no longer in place, but localities can dictate to their regions, such as counties and cities, that they still would require masks. They are putting the power in local government hands rather than having a statewide blanket. That's what this is about. And President Biden wants to see more centralized power. Not that localities and individuals have the freedom to make a conscious decision because of Neanderthal thinking, apparently. I'm sorry. I didn't know that the common American was a Neanderthal or had Neanderthal thinking. This puts people's responsibility in their own hands. It's that simple. If you want to go out of the house and wear a mask and stay safe and be protected because you haven't had the vaccine or you haven't done, you have aged loved ones, it's causing you to think for yourself. Now, if you want to go out of the house and say, I have had the vaccine or I have had the disease, I have the antibodies, I don't need to necessarily be as protected in the wild as other people, then that also gives you the freedom to do that, unless you are under a locality's jurisdiction that states you must still wear a mask. That's all it is. It also allows more differentiation between populated and non-populated areas. In the state of Illinois, that's like saying Chicago still has a mask mandate because of the density of the population, but Timbuktu near Cairo, which literally has like 10 people in a 15-mile square radius, it makes no sense. Okay, if you've got a town of 100 people and half of them have already had COVID or all of them have already had COVID, then what's the worry? It allows them to operate with greater freedom, while Chicago, being a much more population-dense area, it restricts them a little bit more, saying, okay, there's still a greater danger here. That's what this allows. There's just no blanket policy on this one way or the other. So it makes absolutely no sense for this to be as demeaned as it is, especially by a derogatory term such as Neanderthal thinking. Now, the governor has responded with this. The Biden administration is recklessly releasing hundreds of illegal immigrants who have COVID into Texas communities. The Biden administration must immediately end this callous act that exposes Texans and Americans to COVID. Now, Psaki accused Abbott of mischaracterizing the situation. She said it's not factual. She said that Psaki said that testing people allowed to wait asylum case outcomes is the responsibility of state and local governments, and that nonprofits in some cases have, quote, reserved hotel blocks, end quote, to help house COVID-19 positive people, although she never gave examples. She said that, so let me give you an overview of what happens. When migrants are placed in alternatives to detention, their COVID-19 testing, our policy is for COVID-19 testing to be done at the state and local level with the help of NGOs and local governments. So she's saying it's the state's responsibility. It's not the federal government's responsibility, even though the federal government is responsible for immigration. Okay, so you're letting the people into the country, and then you're saying to the state, it's your problem. That's what he's saying. He's saying you're putting them into hotels, into detention alternatives, which puts them closer to society, saying, okay, here's our barrier. We're going to take down an extra step of the barrier. And instead of making it the federal government's problem, you're making it the state government's problem or the local government's problem. That's what you've said. That's essentially what it is. So, yeah. Just, it's strange. But anyway. Yeah. Let's see. Anything else interesting? There's been a couple of interesting things going on. Yeah. I don't really too much want to go into sports. I will say, though, this is pretty cool. So NASA has awarded how do I put this? A key contract. So they have awarded a contract to a company to help produce a vehicle that will be able to return samples from Mars. So Perseverance has landed in the Jezero crater, which will spend the next couple of years searching the area for signs of life. If it finds interesting rocks or dirt, it will cache them into hypersterile vessels that are uncontaminated from any earthly organic materials. Those will then be placed in tubes and stored inside the rover's body. The Mars return mission involves sending 2 spacecraft to Mars. One will land on the planet, meet up with the rover, and grab samples, then take off and orbit Mars. The takeoff part is where this current contract comes in. It's called the MAPS contract. It's called the Mars Sample Return Mission. So the Mars Ascent Propulsion System, by the way, is the contract. The second spacecraft will rendezvous with the craft in Mars orbit and carry the samples back to Earth. So the contract was given, it's NASA and the European Space Agency, the ESA, have awarded the Mars Ascent Propulsion System contract to Northrop Grumman to produce rocket and other engines for the launch. The original plan was to launch the sample return craft by 2026 and have it land in 2028 and return samples to Earth by 2031. Those dates are still up in the air. However, an independent board had recommended allowing more time and cost for the mission. Now, the Northrop Grumman contract is worth up to $84.5 million, which is a small part of the current $3.3 billion estimated budget. NASA said it covers, quote, support and products for the MAPS Ascent propulsion mission and moves NASA and ESA one step closer to realizing the Mars sample return. However, given the complexity of the project, the fact that it's never been tried, don't be surprised if those dates actually end up getting pushed back further. Yeah, interesting on that. Some more space news. The demon-sized asteroid Apophis, which, by the way, was an ancient Egyptian demon, was first spotted in 2004, and is not supposed to pose any real danger to Earth, but it will be flying by this weekend. It will travel past the planet at more than 40 times the distance from the Earth to the Moon, but scientists are using this week as a dress rehearsal for the asteroid's next pass, which will be April 13, 2029, when Apophis will get as close to Earth as some of the highest orbit satellites. A little bit closer. Apophis is in 2029 is going to be a really incredible observing opportunity for us, according to Marina Brozovic, a radar scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. But before we get to 2029, we are preparing. So Apophis is a 1,120 foot wide asteroid made of rock, iron, and nickel. It's shaped roughly like a peanut, although astronomers have a better idea of its form when it passes by Earth this week. The asteroid takes a full orbit around the sun every 11 months. So on March 5, it will come within 93 million miles of Earth at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. On March 6th, that's tomorrow. It's too far to be seen with the naked eye, but scientists will use planetary radar to image Apophis as it flies by using NASA's Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex in California and the Green Bay Telescope in West Virginia. They hope to determine the asteroid's shape specifically and learn more about the way it rotates through space. So it's... Sorry about that. We know Apophis is in a very complicated spin state. It's sort of spinning and tumbling at the same time, according to Richard Benzel, who is a planetary scientist at MIT. So the planetary radar study will provide researchers a baseline for the much closer flyby in 2029, where Apophis will get as close as 19,000 miles from Earth. 19,800 is what they approximately state. But that's close enough that Earth's gravity might change the shape of the asteroid or scatter boulders on its surface. And how and if the asteroid changes as it flies by will help reveal details about the asteroid's inner structure, according to Binzel. Now, when it does approach in 2029, Apophis will actually be visible to the naked eye over Western Australia, however. But it will be growing as bright as the stars in the Big Dipper and will be closest to Earth at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on April 13, 2029. So interestingly enough, that is our science news for today. There is really not a lot. There's some more stuff here and there. The Pope is going to Iraq. Yeah, it's just, yeah. There's not a lot. There really isn't a lot. Now, there is an issue here with Hong Kong. So China is promising robust growth, but they are also promising a crackdown on more of Hong Kong's free thinking society. Hong Kong, as you know, has been protesting ever since the Chinese took over that they want more free and democratic elections. China, however, has said you can have free and democratic elections as long as the people that are being elected are approved by the Communist Party. So they kind of have said you are allowed to elect Communist Party members. Those are your elections. Yeah. They're also stating that they are going to change the Hong Kong electoral system. So Beijing today, earlier today, I should say, voted to improve. That's the word they're using. Improve Hong Kong's electoral system. It's a widely anticipated move as China tightened its hold on the semi-autonomous region. Before the proposal was announced, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said that the start of China's annual 2 sessions parliamentary meeting that the country will, quote, resolutely guard against and deter external forces' influence, end quote, in the city. The proposed changes include adjusting the size, composition, and formation of Hong Kong's election committee, which selects the city's leader or chief executive, said state media Xinhua. Beijing also wants to expand the committee's function to include electing, quote, a relatively large share, end quote, of Hong Kong's legislative body and nominating candidates for the body, said Xinhua. Last week, media outlets including Reuters reported that potential changes to Hong Kong's electoral system would hold back Hong Kong's pro-democracy politicians, which it is definitely doing. The city is governed under a one country, two systems principle, which does give it greater autonomy than other mainland Chinese cities, including limited election rights. However, Beijing has been criticized internationally, specifically by the US and UK, for undermining Hong Kong's autonomy that it was promised under the one country, two systems framework. Again, that was the framework that was given to the Chinese government when the UK gave the control of the Hong Kong region over to China. Proposed changes to Hong Kong's electoral system came about a year after China bypassed the securities legislation to enact a controversial national security law. Again, elected officials not being allowed to do anything. Implementation of the law followed months of pro-democracy protests in the city that sometimes turned violent. There were deaths, there were hundreds of arrests, and many of those people have not actually been seen since then. Chinese officials and state media had often said, quote, external forces, end quote, were behind the Hong Kong protests. That's what they claim. Video and other things have shown otherwise. Wang Chen, the vice chairman of the National People's Congress Standing Committee, said on Friday that rioting and turbulence in Hong Kong point to, quote, clear loopholes and deficiencies, end quote, in the electoral system. Yeah. Chen added that the changes must be made so that Hong Kong is governed only by, quote, patriots, according to the report. Whitman Hung, a Hong Kong deputy to the 13th NPC, which is the National People's Congress, the legislature, told CNBC's Capital Connection that China always assumed that, quote, Hong Kong people who are patriots, end quote, will lead the city. The Chinese leadership was confident in them running Hong Kong. Nobody was questioning it until recently, he said on Friday. What we found is that maybe the assumption wasn't true. Yeah, so the autonomy that Hong Kong had enjoyed for a few hundred years doesn't exist anymore, and China is tightening its grip ever further on Hong Kong. They're basically saying, well, if you look at it from a jurisprudence point of view, it's perfectly legal and in line. They're not saying that it's, crushing people or that it's, something else. No, it's legal. It's legal. That's what makes it right, is it's legal. So, yep. Well, I don't know if there's much of anything else for today. So I guess we're just gonna leave it there. Oh, yeah. Well, WandaVision is over. A Quiet Place 2 release date moves up to May. There's not a lot really to talk about. Oh, by the way, I will say this. The Chicago Bears, the little bit of sports news, the Chicago Bears have actually offered the most for Deshaun Watson. We'll see if that comes true, because honestly, I think it'd be interesting, but just commentary. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in and not tuning out. Remember, 8 o'clock tonight Central Time will be around our roundtable show. I'm hoping Spaniard will be back. I don't know if Spaniard will be back. I'm not sure. It's been a week without him. I'd really like for him to be back. But anyway, thank you guys again for being here. I appreciate all your views. Remember to like the video, comment, subscribe, the whole deal. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a great day. Remember, keep it tight. Preacher out.